What is up, chat, and welcome to another ShawnSetGO video. Today, we're going to be going across my previous video. And so there's going to be kind of a redressing of the video I made just the other day and kind of talking about some of those same topics. So if you haven't seen the previous video, it's called Blizzard Keeps Doing This to Delves. Basically, in summary, I was mainly talking about how I don't think that the gearing in Delves is exactly what we should be wanting for solo players. I mean, as people who are considerate of the community, I think we should think of what's best for the community as a whole. And I think that came across as condescending, and I think it came across as me trying to tell people what they shouldn't do, what they like, shouldn't like. And I didn't want it to come across that way, but still, you know, things happen that way. And so I wanted to clarify, maybe kind of come back and just kind of talk at it from a different perspective, at least reaffirm some points, and then kind of redress what's in the comments. So let's jump into that. So of course, the video is sitting pretty low, and by comparison to most of my videos get about 80 to 90% likes, and I do consider these things important. Not every creator does, but basically in this you can see a number of comments saying I'll never do Mythic Plus again, would be happy to only do it for gear now I can only do delves and I'm good. And this one says if you let them finish the same amount of gilded crest per week, they won't need to come join your 8+ keys. So basically allow people to gear so they don't ever have to do keys. If you don't want delve players joining Mythic, they'll need to be given the same level of gear, so that there's no incentive to just play style preference of whether you enjoy solo or group content. And this is kind of combating my point where I said maybe gearing should be different. Maybe we should have different gearing, sort of we have different gearing for PvP, you know, going against that point. I don't understand some of the comments. You don't need high-end currency gear to play solo or with partner or casual. Currently, you can have a heroic tier set from delves fairly quickly and never have to step into a raid. And that's kind of the point that I was saying. You know, the point was, you know, basically like, why continue to scale gear unless you're going to continue to scale delves? But it doesn't really seem like that's happening. And if they're going to make it to where now 11s are harder than what they used to be, 8s are harder than what they used to be, so you can get higher gear, then that's a whole different scaling question that we're talking about. But still, does that translate into Mythics? Because currently it doesn't necessarily translate optimally. So I wanted to talk about specifically two comments. This first one that says, you're making grand assumptions about players. Not every delve player just does solo content and is oblivious to how Mythic Plus works. Myself and others in my circle were regular Keystone Masters and previously did dungeons with challenge modes. We just eschew Mythics because it's often a headache to organize and run. We're happy delves allow us to play a lot more casually, still have a gearing path, and that was previously denied for solo players. I 100% agree with that. Just that last section there that says we have a path that was once previously not accessible to us. I think that's 100% correct. I think previously you would hit a wall when it came to gearing, to the where it didn't matter, you know, how good you were at the game. Soloable content didn't exist, largely for a number of reasons, but I think that was kind of to the core of what WoW was established on, is having that group content be high level content. But for solo players, that was a wall that you would reach. Now, granted, you could still pug into content solo, but you're still doing group content, which is kind of the same way you could do delves in a way, but that's not the point. So what I wanted to say was, I was never saying that this is all players. You know, this is what every delve player does, or this is the example of every delve player. I'm just talking about a specific subset of person. And of course, these are just my opinions, but I think there's more people within the delve community who are trying to get into Mythics, but I've said in the past before, it's not necessarily their fault that they don't mesh well with Mythics. Some people say it's all the community. I understand that point, but I personally think the game is developed in such a way, and there's been comments in this video as well. I've said that Ian Hazzikostas himself has said that it was not been optimized well for people to bridge into Mythics. So clearly there's an intent there that's not being achieved. So there are many people who play delves casually, as well as those who do it for vault or materials, as well as Mythics, raiding. I think this obviously exists, and I'm not trying to say that it doesn't exist. I also understand that the perspective of Mythics being a hassle, totally get it. It is a hassle. It's a pain. I mean, even being a prot warrior where groups are easy, it's a pain knowing that if I make a mistake during this time, I'm nuking the entire mythic. So it's even more so for certain roles. But even in that comment, they said delves are casual. I would argue that the gear makes lower mythics casual once you are geared. Eventually, we'll start to scale up and up and up and up until you can no longer gear past the level of difficulty you're trying to achieve. Now, tier 11s state that the accessible range that you need to in order to play that is 623 plus. I don't think I've ever done seen a level tier 11 clear with that being the case. Most people are pretty undergeared, but there's also not really a whole bunch of reasons right now to do so. So I mean, that might be the reason that we're not really seeing that. So, but my point is that in that comparison, you have a version of the game where the game is scaling with your gear until you can basically no longer scale that gear to match the challenge of content. At a certain point, you're not acquiring anything just like you would in Delves extra from that, but there is a challenge there in that. I mean, we can't ignore that, you know, things like Raider IO and these scoring systems exist outside the game that people do put weight into, and into a competitive level that Delves, it just doesn't exist yet. You know, there's not something on that level quite. You know, maybe there will be at some point or another. I don't think there will be, because there might be a lot of pushback from that. Maybe in some small microcosm of the community, but it just doesn't exist in that way. But that's a clear difference between casual content that scales higher, but it's still quite trivial. You can clear most gear with champion track, like 610 item level and below, relatively easy. I think that all the free item level upgrades, though, that we're getting and that is being included with that patch update. So for those of you who haven't seen it, I think I still have it somewhere here. Yeah, here it is. So in this, basically, it's showing that in season 2, it's going to allow delves with tier 11 and Delver's bounty. So you have tier 8 and up, giving you gilded undermine crest, and that allowing you to upgrade gear to item levels 662. If you haven't looked at it, there's an article here in Icy Veins that talks about what that gearing is going to look like for season 2 and some of those item levels and where we can expect it. I would say for the most part, where gearing is looking is, if you're going to compare it at all, this is about from the season 1 to season 2, there's about 23 item levels that we're increasing everyone's gear, just jumping a season. I mean, this is normal. I think in experiences before, it's been like 26, 27, maybe somewhat higher. But we can expect that delve only players would likely be in this 649 range, this hero range. Because if you go back to season 1 and look at the item leveling, you could see that 619 range, most likely in the 610 to 619 range is where most delve players at. If you compare that to season 2, you would expect to see that most players are probably going to be in that 649 ish range, probably just above, like in that mid champion levels, maybe the 636 to 649 if you're going to give it a range, I would expect. So given that these things are increasing, putting players in season 2 above the max 639 range for season 1, my question was just why? Like why have gearing that way? And I think a valid argument that you could say is that, you know, like, hey, this allows me to clear delves easier, you know, not necessarily that you need it, but maybe just clear them faster. I mean, there's so few bountiful delves you can already run. So maybe just clearing those quicker, even for those people who just do delves to get their vault clears, maybe in that sort of kind of way. I could understand doing so. But in my first video, I think that I was coming more from the perspective of, it didn't really make sense to me why the desire is to get gearing that sort of circumvents Mythic Plus. And a lot of my comments as well is like, it's like, I can't wait to get item level gearing that's so high, and basically I can avoid Mythic Plus altogether. Like this is like this kind of mindset of like, basically, I just want the number that matches the other version of content I don't want to do. Whether they can or not do it doesn't really matter, but they just kind of like, they're kind of butting heads over, I want the number that matches yours. It's sort of like it's a weird measurement contest that doesn't make a whole lot of sense in my opinion. So I think that the reason why this isn't helping is because the chart suggests that that things are going up and scaling up, and effectively we're providing more routes. Because right now, there's not a whole bunch of gildeds that you're going to get out of it. Like, so you're going to get a whole bunch of gilded crests. I think there's definitely possibilities that there are people who are 619 and above. I think beyond that, the numbers aren't improving. And let me show you another graph that'll hopefully help explain what I'm saying. So in this graph here, you can see Dragonflight Season 4. This is, of course, post-squish, where the mythics were kind of how they are now. In that your rating it was a lot more meaningful to have a +10, basically, to have a higher rating. So you could see in here that I would say the rating of 1500 and above, you're online. Like your brain is on. 750. I mean, it's not a whole lot of people. But it does say top 62%. So the top 62% of people getting rating or there are in 750 plus rating. Considering that's basically 62% of that population trying this content, that's still sort of low, but still Mythic Plus is only part of WoW. But as you can see, as the rating gets higher, less and less people participate. So 62%, as you get to 1500, it's 42%. Keystone Master 2K rating is 33%, and then Keystone Hero top 16%. So I was like, let me see the comparisons. What have Delves done to bridge people from Mythics to Mythics after they've gotten their gear? And unfortunately, it's looking quite the same. And like I said, that 1500 rating is where I would kind of say people are online. Like this is where kind of people aren't like just mashed, like they're doing something. At least I like to imagine. I think basing it off a 2K rating may not be fair. But as you can see, the numbers are almost exactly the same. So we have this way of introducing people into the game, and all we're seeing at most, in my opinion, is an 8% increase in a 1500 rating. So having a base rating in the game, and that's it. We're not properly getting those people from Delves into Mythics and going, hey, this content gets me gear a lot faster routes. So right now, in my opinion, giving people gear to make it higher isn't going to help this, because we have implemented what should be the biggest way for players to have gear, get gear, just starter gear, beyond heroics, and upgrade it to levels that they should be able to at least get into your base mythics and then ease into your +8s. A lot of people like to say +8s are nothing, +10s are nothing. They are not nothing. They are actually challenging. They are actually hard. If you have a good group, anything's easy. But I like to base things off of bad groups. If it's a bad group, you're screwed. Things aren't going to be good. So I don't think it's fair to base things off of that. But as you can see, there's a bit of reality check that comes with the changes that have come with Delves being added, that I think a lot of people are going like, we're in your Delves and we're not causing issues. It's like, well, how come the ratings aren't going up? How come we're not getting more people who are getting rating? So it wouldn't make sense that the routes exist and things aren't really improving. The numbers aren't really jumping up like we should see, because these routes didn't exist before and now they do. So it doesn't exactly correlate to the data that exists. And I know the numbers, like I wasn't using the numbers. There's thousands of characters. Like 500,000 or something like that. I know not everybody uses the same system, so it's not 100% accurate, but I think you can at least go out the percentages. So I think champion, that tracking of gear being for tiers 8 through 11, basically, and then acquiring gilded for hero and mythic track, it becomes inconvenient for most, or at least becomes quite the grind. Changing from that system to now a system that provides avenues to basically go, hey, you know how this is a bit of a grind, it's a bit hard, kind of going like if you're gonna want to do this, you want to do mythics, kind of saying, let's just pull that out, but create a cap so people don't too much. It's kind of replacing the problem with another problem in the way that Blizzard traditionally does, which is, I think, a lot of time gating, a lot of just artificially extending the time. And this is something I explained in my first video, talking about how I think that these things don't do a lot to bring us together. It kind of just creates a lot of friction. I think capping the gilded to 18 doesn't seem to make the problem any bit better. it creates that problem and makes it worse too. I think Blizzard is always trying to solve things with limitations and penalties, and it doesn't work. And I don't know why they keep on doing it. I gotta imagine it's some sort of development strategy that I'm not privy to whatsoever. So that's what I think of. I think, though, ultimately, to kind of wrap this up, I think this is arguing for what I'm saying in a different way. Like the comments are kind of like they're kind of, a lot of them, people are coming at it from, well, I don't like your opinion of what you're saying, but I do agree things should be different. I think most people agree that delve should be different or separate, or at least they should allow for some sort of distinction of some sort. And that's all I was trying to say. I think that creating routes for delvers to get gear and stay out of mythic raids is fine if you think of like a worst case scenario, but I think it comes against the wall of, to what ends do delves serve? Like what ends are we trying to achieve with this? So if solo players just want to get their content and focus on making it easier, that's not a problem. But I want to take a step back and say that I simply like WoW the way it used to be. I think that there's a lot of fear that I think this kind of becomes like Star Wars: The Old Republic, where there's a plethora of content for solo players, but the experience together is either impossible to approach or just too inconvenient for players to start doing group content. And I think this affects the games negatively as a whole. So where I'm coming from is less of I'm a mythic player or I heroic raid or I do delves. Honestly, I'm not hyper like playing any of these game modes. I create content. Just like a lot of you, I'm a parent. I have a full-time job. I'm active duty military. I don't have a ton of time to play this game. And when I do, I try to play, as much constructively as I can. Now I play this game a lot longer than most. So, I mean, I'm able to play this game casually, but play maybe to a higher level of gameplay a lot easier. But I know that that's not everybody's route of things. So I hope that there's a way for these things to be merged, not necessarily circumvented. So I think basically what we're kind of going down is that slippery slope where it just becomes too inconvenient for most players until everything that brings the community together, or should bring the community together, just feels forced and the whole game suffers for it. So I'm not here to advocate for Mythic Plus rating, but when I, as someone who is just above the casual level, says, hey, this has actively made my game worse, or like my experience in the game worse, because I'm either feel forced to do delve content so I can gather extra currency, or the alternative, which is delvers come into other forms of content and it actively makes my experience worse. Like one of those two things, like you're eventually bound to interact with some negative experiences there. And it's not necessarily that people who only do mythics are all fine and it's just delvers, but more often than not, it tends to happen and you tend to go, okay, I can see where this is coming from. So I feel like it's people, whenever you join into these Reddit groups or these comments, that refuse to see any other side other than their own. I don't intend to make anyone's experience like their experience worse or make you feel like the way you're playing is wrong. Do what you wish. It's totally fine. That said, the game used to bring people together. I used to like that aspect in a lot of ways. And it seems the only time it happens now is when we give stuff to people for free and it's very low hanging fruit. And then it kind of makes it degrades the quality of the game when we just give things to people. Not to say that everything should have like this gating of being difficult for everybody. There shouldn't be casual modes for gameplay. There exist, even outside of delves, many ways to play casually. I don't think like you could play most game modes casually, really. You could do M0s casually, and your low mythics casually. It really does exist. I promise you, it's not that bad. But I just want it to be like a focus, a redirection of the real problem, which is that Blizzard is constantly time gating these things and capping these things. That kind of brings everybody down, where everyone feels like they're forced to intermingle. And then instead of making it fun or creating things and implementing things that go like, hey, we're going to make it easier for delvers to play with Mythic Plus players so there's less friction, we go, well, you can do the same thing Mythic players are doing at a lower rate, and we're going to make it harder in this way. And so I think people who play delves often fight with people who play Mythics. And it's like you guys aren't even the true enemies here. You're fighting each other when the true enemy's out there, out there in Blizzard Entertainment land. So I think that's the true thing we need to focus on. I think that we need to instead of trying to making these people interact, instead of making it fun to instead we should make it fun to group with other people. And then I think it's important that we get progression through a shared experience. We get gear through luck and an effort that we put in, and not just kind of a grind in RNG. Because like right now, it just kind of feels like at a certain point, even you do mythics and you're not even doing mythics and getting gear from mythics. You're just kind of doing it for vaults. So you're doing vault and then getting the best possible chances to get an RNG chance at a piece of gear. And then once you get your optimal set of piece of gear, or your best item, you upgrade it into Oblivion, but it's still the same piece. You're not changing sets or play styles other than for like a trinket window or an ability window every once in a while. And that rarely happens. So I think this is where the game is getting scaled. These are the things that are making the game actively worse. And I don't want you to feel like, or I don't want anyone to feel like that, that delves are the problem here. I feel like there's things that are implemented and strategies that are implemented that actively make the game just feel worse. And I think that comes off as time gating, and I can understand where people are coming from with that. But yeah, I wanted to clarify those things and make those things a little bit more clear for people who are kind of coming in the comments and kind of saying the same thing. So as per usual, hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I made nobody upset, truly. But hope this was helpful and not only explaining things, but kind of seeing where the real problems are. And then of course, in the comments, let me know, where do you think the problems truly lie? Where do you think the problems truly are to mend these bridges and help people come together? Not necessarily force people to do group content all the time, but ways that we can make it to where people who have any bit of desire that they can do so. So let me know in the comments, but until next time, I'll catch you on the next one. It was a pleasure making videos for you again. And yeah, hope to see you in the next stream or in the next video. Peace.